back on the stand today is IDAC head Andrea Johnson. Commissioner Baloyi starting off by quizzing Advocate Johnson on what is seemingly a lack of prescribed processes for IDAC staff when handling complaints. Now, this, of course, is in relation to Chief Perumal speaking to a complainant, Fadil Adams, before a decision was made to take on the case for investigation. Now, Advocate Johnson responding that they have a process map. Whether those process maps are formal doesn't seem to be quite clear from her response, but Advocate Johnson going on to concede, nevertheless, that the Commissioner's point is important for future consideration, that they should make up rules. They shouldn't, pardon me, make up rules as they go. Then Advocate Johnson was questioned on contradictions between her testimony before the ad hoc committee on the criminal infiltration allegations and her testimony now before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. So Advocate Johnson told the ad hoc committee that she didn't receive the Section 27 referral from Adams herself, but IDAC had received it. However, she's told the Madlanga Commission in the past 2 days that she in fact received it and then triggered the process for investigation. Advocate Johnson conceding immediately there that she gave incorrect information to the ad hoc committee. Then Commissioner Baloyi saying she doesn't think the ad hoc committee would take kindly to having been given the incorrect information, or learning now that they were in fact given incorrect information. I must say, quite damning concession there. But to take us through all that has been heard by the commission thus far is my colleague Ayanda Nyati, who's at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College and has been following the testimony closely. A very good morning to you yet again, Ayanda. It seems like commissioners are getting a lot of concessions out of Ms. Johnson yet again. And the one that stands out for me being just those contradictions in her testimony that she had before the ad hoc committee and what we've been hearing now.
Absolutely, Mfundo. It feels like Advocate Andrea Johnson has gone from the pan straight into the fire itself. Really difficult testimony. Within 10 minutes of us starting today, she had already been confronted with questions surrounding whether or not members of her unit essentially went ahead of her by engaging Fadil Adams, who we know is the complainant in this matter, before an official investigation had been instituted. Kenny Mapanga is our senior reporter who's been with us since the start of the proceedings and joins us now live. And Kenny, I mean, already there were questions around whether or not IDAC should start seriously considering having formal structures in place to ensure that people aren't going on a frolic of their own. That's a quote from the evidence leader.
Indeed, and there's multiple layers or inferences attached to this particular evidence. It's either they were on their own frolic or they got the instructions from Advocate Andrea Johnson herself. And the evidence is leaning to the latter because she's already stated under oath that these are her instances upon which these investigators act. So the issue of the 12 names, because we know that I think it's only 4 of the 12 that are mentioned in the statement of Fadil Adams. So the question is, how did she come up with the other names? And she places it at the responsibility of ultimately Mr. Perumal, who is the chief investigator, if I could put it that way, within IDAC. And essentially, if that indeed is the case, then it means that Mr. Perumal went to Fadil Adams to get the names. And the question is how he did that and why he did that if the investigation had not been authorized at that stage. So it's either they act out of their own will and continue with processes without authorization, or it had to have come from Advocate Andrea herself. And there's several other concessions that are being made in this regard with this particular case that raises further red flags as to what really was this matter about. Had there already been a conclusion formulated and where they were allegedly rushing to that, because it doesn't make sense as to why the process was not being followed according to whatever prescripts are set for IDAC. Even worse, the testimony at ad hoc is now being held up to her, which contradicts what she's stating before the Madlanga Commission. Now, at ad hoc, she stated that she had never seen that correspondence from the minister, but here it's the basis upon which we learn of the Section 27. So which one is it?
Exactly, and let me come in there, Kenny, because it is precisely that correspondence that sets in motion all the events that essentially bring us here.
She created the impression at ad hoc that it was Fadil Adams that approached them. But here at the Madlanga Commission, we understand it as IDAC approaching Mr. Fadil Adams, which is even worse, because it meant that they went and solicited an affidavit from this particular individual. And the question is, to what end? So the questions continue to be difficult for Advocate Andrea Johnson. Either this new structure doesn't have a way in which they do things, and we understand understand that IDAC is new, or there is something allegedly more sinister that you must read into this conduct. It's either one or the other. It's not coming across clear, but what is definitive here before the probe is that there was no factual basis upon which to pursue this particular matter against these individuals. It's now getting to the motivation behind why things played out the way they did. Is it a lack of structure, a lack of guidance, a lack of purpose in their mandate, or is it something allegedly more sinister as alleged by other generals that have come before the Madlanga Commission? The continued probing will get us to where that is, but as things stand, even with the evidence relating to the dockets and the rush to get claim of those particular dockets that were currently under investigation raises further questions as to really what this conduct was truly about.
Yeah, and I suppose, Kenny, that's a good place to take our viewer back to one of those instances during the testimony where Advocate Matlapeselo actually put it to the witness that perhaps everybody is essentially doing their own thing. Take a listen.
One gets a sense, and I may be wholly wrong, and I would need you to help me to change my mind. It would sound like everybody in IDAC is on a frolic of their own. And this is the start now with this particular investigation. And as we'll see going forward, that seems to permeate through the organization. Is my understanding correct or wholly wrong? And I do accept I may have the wrong end of the stick.
They don't go on a frolic of their own. Okay. We do adhere to the processes and the prescripts. I'm not saying someone may not deviate. Investigators are out in the field. If there is a deviation and it comes to the fore, then we have to deal with it and understand why the deviation. But there isn't a frolic of their own. They have to adhere to the internal processes, and as I did indicate to commissioners yesterday, apart from the legislation, we have tried to operationalize things in a practical manner.
All right, so there you have it. Advocate Andrea Johnson, I beg your pardon, saying that perhaps they now need to operationalize things in a more formal manner. And Kenny, that speaks to the point that you have just made, that we do know that this is a new unit, and so I suppose some things could be built as they're flying the plane, so to speak. But there still are a number of questions that are left, shall we say, hanging about how they went about this investigation, because what we also heard is Advocate Baloyi asking Advocate Andrea Johnson why it is that if they believed Fadil Adams had classified documents, they didn't actually refer him to the relevant authorities to deal with that.
Indeed, and they had no interest in finding out what was actually in those classified documents and whether or not they supported the claims or suspicions that he was making in the Section 27 referral. She doesn't refer to the appropriate institution to flag that he indeed has access to these documents, and then she, for herself, also doesn't ascertain whether or not it's relevant to the Section 27 referral and the claims made there. They're happy to just run off of suspicions to then arrest people and pursue a full case or full investigation into this matter, and the question is why. And as she continues to, I guess, take that hot seat, we hope to get to the alleged true motivation behind the conduct, which just doesn't make sense at this current stage as the Commission continues to focus on IDAC, which has been placed at the center of this alleged SABC factional war.
All right, Kenny Mapanga, thanks very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. Kenny Mapanga, our senior reporter here at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. We anticipate that Andrea Johnson's testimony will resume, at 11:40. So